Who Believes in Ghosts by Jack London. A remarkably good one for you, but I know of one that beats. No, Damon, I know you always have a story to cap the last one, but I meant this in all honesty. And if you doubt its truth, at least believe my sincerity in telling it. George, you don't mean to tell me that you really believe in ghosts? Why, the very idea is absurd, and to connect credence in such a thing with you is... And Van Buster, otherwise known as Damon, paused for lack of an expletive, and finally exploded in preposterous. But I do believe in it. And in faith I am not alone, for on my side I can array the greatest lights of every age from the days of Chaldean necromancy down to the cold scientific today. Pause and reflect, O Damon, and Pythias too, for I can see the skeptical twinkle in your eye. Remember that in every time, in every land, and in every people, there have been and there are many who did believe in the soul's return after death. Can you, with this great mass of evidence staring you in the face, say that it is all the creation of diseased brains and abnormal imaginations? And as Damon and Pythias both affirmed his accusation, he concluded with a pious hope that some day they would be forced to change their minds by a proof very unpleasantly applied. Come, Pythias, what have you to say in our mutual defense? Show our credulous friend the firm foundation on which we stand. Bring all your mighty logic to bear, and sophistry too, for it is a very bad case. Show him that this psychic force is but the creation of man's own fertile imagination. Prove to him that these earthbound spirits, astral forms, and disembodied entities are but chimeras. Ah, Damon, he lazily drawled, I care not to waste my stupendous knowledge and laborious research on such petty subjects. If I were challenged into controversy on the land, tariff, or finance question, I fain would reply, but this seems too much like the nursery babble on the bogeyman. Earthbound spirits, forsooth! All I can say to dear George is that he is an ass, and until he can introduce me to some astral form, I dismiss the subject. In no wise put out by the sarcasm of his friends, George said, I feel like singing that old doggerel. Just go down to Derby Town and see the same as I, for I have seen many, and what I consider authentic proofs of the existence and activity of this force. I know that all argument is useless when I have opposed to me two such master minds. Yet so far have they sank into intellectual stagnation that they know not, and know not that they know not. We all view the world through colored glasses, but these glasses are so very, very green that one almost feels— And you must confess that you are rather smoky, interrupted Damon. But come, George, we'll not quarrel over such a subject. You know the position I always assume when dealing with the unknown. I neither affirm nor deny, and I can but say that plausibility, if not possibility, is with your belief. In justice to you, to myself, and to the world, all I can say is that I do not know, but would like to know. And I coincide with Pythias in asking you to bring us personally in contact with these disembodied souls. There's the old Bitrol mansion, drawled Pythias. Perhaps we can gain an introduction there. They say it's haunted. The very place, cried Damon. Do you think the ghost that walks the gloomy corridors at midnight's dread hour, etc., would condescend to become visible for the edification of two such miserable, unbelieving mortals as we are? Here's a grand opportunity. It's only 10, and we can be there by 11. Pythias and I will arm ourselves with a couple of dozen candles, half a dozen ounces of dirham, and Trilby to read aloud, turn about, the last to affect and prepare our imaginations. What say you, Pythias, to the lark? I am always agreeable, he replied. I've got the time to spare now from my grind. I'm through with the X's, you know, but I move to amend by striking out Tilby and inserting chess. Also that we bring a bunch of firecrackers to let off when the ghost makes his appearance. It might be a Chinese devil, you know. And of course you'll accompany us, George? No? Then you had better find a companion, and keep guard outside in case of accidents, and to see that we do not run away. That's easily arranged, answered George. I can get Fred. He will just be going out now to hunt cats. Hunt cats? From Damon and Pythias. Yes, hunt cats. You see, he's deep in Gray's Anatomy now, in his hard run for subjects. Why, he even did away with his sister's big Maltese, and so proud was he when he had articulated it that he had to check to show it to her, telling her it was the skeleton of a rabbit. The brute! The cat? No, Fred. How poor Dora must have mourned for her lost tabby. He ought to be thrashed. No, dissected, then articulated and presented to his bereaved relatives as a missing link. They would no more recognize him than did Dora her cat. If cats had souls, I would be afraid to venture out at night if I were he. Have they got souls, George? I don't know, but don't let's waste any more time. If we intend carrying this project out, we must all meet by 11 sharp in front of the house. They agreed, so paying their reckoning, they left the restaurant, George to hunt up Fred, and Damon and Pythias to invest their spare cash in candles, firecrackers, and dirham. By 11, the four friends had assembled in front of the Birchall mansion. They were all high-spirited, and when they came to part, George addressed them as follows. O Damon the agnostic and Pythias the skeptic, heed well my last words. You venture within a place purported by the vulgar to be haunted. The truth of this, as yet, remains to be proven. But remember that this power, which you will have to contend with, will not be resisted as those earthly forces of which you have knowledge. It is mysterious, imponderable, and powerful. It is invisible, yet oftentimes visible, and it can exert itself in innumerable ways, opening locked doors, putting out lights, dropping bricks, and strange sounds, cries, curses, and moans are but the lower demonstration of this phenomena. Also, as we have in this life men inclined to good and evil, so have we in the life to come spirits, both good and bad. Woe betide you if you are thrown to contact with evil spirits. You may be lifted up bodily and dashed to the floor against the walls like a football. You may see gruesome sights even beyond the conception of mortal. And so great a terror may be brought upon you that your minds may lose their balance and leave you gibbering idiots or violently insane. And again, these evil spirits have the power to deprive you of one, two, or all your senses, if they so wish. They can burst your eardrums, sear your eyes, destroy your voice, sadly impair your sense of taste and smell, and paralyze the body in any or every nerve. And even as in the days of Christ, they may make their habitation within your bodies, and you will be tormented with evil spirits, and then the asylum and padded cell stares you in the face. I have no advice to give you in dealing with this mysterious subject, for I am ignorant, but my parting words are, keep cool. May you prosper in your undertaking, and beware. They then separated, Damon and Pythias in quest of ghosts, and George and Fred in quest of cats. The first couple strode up to the front door, but finding it locked and that the spirits did not respond after they had duly exercised the great old-fashioned knocker, they tried the windows on the long portico. These were also locked. After quite a shamble, they scaled the portico and found a second-story window open. As soon as they gained an entrance, they lighted a couple of candles and proceeded to explore. Everything was old-fashioned, dusty, and musty. They had expected this. Commencing on the third floor, they thoroughly overhauled everything, opening the closets, pulling aside the rotten tapestries, looking for trapdoors, and even sounding the walls. These actions, however, accounted for by the fact that both had recently read Émile Geberel, emulated Monsieur Lacour. They even descended to the basement, but this was such a complex affair that they gave it up in despair. Returning to the second floor with a couple of stools and a box they had found, they proceeded to make themselves comfortable in the cleanest room they could find. Though half a dozen candles illuminated the apartment, it still seemed dreary and desolate, and dampened their high spirits to just the pitch, as Damon said, for a good game of chess. By the time an hour and a half had elapsed, they concluded their first game, and a magnificent game it had been. Pythias opened his wallet and remarked, 12:30 and no ghost. The reason is the room is so smoky that the poor ghosts can't become visible, replied Damon. Throw open the window and let some of it out. This task accomplished, they arranged the board for another game. Just as Damon stretched forth his hand to advance the white king's pawn, he suddenly stopped with a startled expression on his face, as also did Pythias. Silently and with questioning look, they glanced at each other, and their mutual yet incomprehensible consternation was apparent. Again did he essay to advance the pawn, and again did he stop, and again did they gaze startled into each other's faces. The silence seemed so palpable that it pressed against them like a leaden weight. The tension on their nerves was terrible, and each strove to break it, but in vain. Then they thought of the warning George had given them. Was it possible? Could it be true? Had they been deprived of the power of speech by this conscious psychic force, which neither believed in? As in a nightmare, they longed to cry out, to break the horrible paralyzing influence. Pythias was deathly pale, while the perspiration formed in great drops on Damon's forehead, and trickling down the bridge of his nose, fell in a minute cataract upon his clean white tie and glossy shirt front. For an age, it seemed to them, but not more than a couple of minutes, they sat staring agonized at each other. At last their intuition warned them that affairs were approaching a crisis. They knew the strain could not last much longer. Suddenly, weird and shrill, there rose on the still night air, and was wafted in through the open window, the cry of a cat. Then there was a scramble as over a fence, the sound of rocks striking against boards, and the cat's triumphant cry was charged to a yowl of pain and terror which quickly turned to a choking gurgle. And they heard the enthusiastic voice of Fred cry, "Number 1!" as a diver rising from depths of ocean feels the wondrous pleasure when he drives the ventilated air from his lungs and breathes anew the essence of life, so felt they, but for a moment. The spell was not broken. Then their consternation returned, mutilated a secondfold. Both felt a hysterical desire to laugh. So ludicrous appeared the situation. But by the mysterious power, even this was denied, and their faces were distorted in an idiotic gibber. This so horrified them that they quickly brought their wills to bear, and their faces resumed the expression of bewilderment. Simultaneously a light dawned upon them. They had the power of motion left. The movement of their lips had demonstrated this. They half rose, as though to flee, when the cowardice of it shamed them, and they resumed their seats. Pythias touched a bunch of firecrackers to the candle and threw them in the middle of the room. The crackers sputtered and whizzed, snapped and banged, filling the room with a dense cloud of smoke, which hung over them like a pall, weirdly oppressive in the terrifying silence that followed. Then a strange sensation came over Damon. All fear of the supernatural seemed to leave him, being replaced by a wild, fierce, all-absorbing desire to begin the game. In a vague sort of way, he realized that he was undergoing a reincarnation. He felt himself to be rapidly evolving into someone else, or someone else was rapidly evolving into him. His own personality disappeared, and as in a dream, he found another and more powerful personality had been projected into, or had overcome, swallowed up his own. To himself he seemed to have become old and feeble as he bent under a weight of years, yet he felt the burden to be strangely light, as though upheld by the burning, enthusiastic excitement which boiled and bubbled and thrilled within him. He felt as though his destiny lay in the board before him, as though his life, his soul, his all hung in the balance of the game he was to play. Then implacable hatred and horrid desire for revenge quickened to life within him. 1,000 wrongs seemed to rise before him with vivid brightness. 1,000 devils seemed urging him on to the consummation of his desire. How he hated that thing, that man who was Satan incarnate, who opposed him across the chessboard. He cast a defiant glance at him, and with the swiftness of a soaring eagle his hatred increased as he looked on the treacherous, smiling face and into the half-veiled, deceitful eyes. It was not Pythias. He was gone. Why and when, he did not even wonder. As these strange things had happened to Damon, so happened they to Pythias. He despised the opponent who faced him. He felt endowed with all the cunning and low trickery of the world. The other was within his power. He knew that and was glad as he smiled into his face with exasperating elation. The exultation to overthrow, to cast him down, rose paramount. He also desired to begin. The game commenced. Damon boldly opened by offering the gambit. Pythias responded but played on the defensive. Damon's attack was brilliant and rapid, but he was met by combinations so bold and novel that by the 27th move, it was broken up and Pythias still retained the gambit pawn. Exerting himself anew, Damon, by a most sound and enduring method of attack, so placed Pythias that he had either to lose his queen or suffer mate in 4 moves. But by a startling series of daring moves, Pythias extricated himself with the loss of 2 pawns and a knight. Elated by success, Damon attacked wildly, but was repulsed by the more cautious play of his opponent, who, by creating a diversion on the right flank and by delicate maneuvering, recovered himself and once more grappled his adversary on equal ground. And so the game, one of the greatest the world had ever seen, proceeded. It was a mighty duel in which the participants forgot that the world still moved on, and when the first gray of dawn appeared at the window, it found Damon in a serious predicament. He would be forced to double his rooks to avoid checkmate, he saw that. Then his opponent would check his queen under cover and capture his red bishop. Checkmate would then be inevitable. Suddenly, however, a light broke upon the situation. A brilliant move was apparent to him. By a series of moves which he would inaugurate, he could force his adversary's queen and turn the tables. Fate intervened. The shrill cry of a cat rose on the air and distracted his concentration. The contemplated move was lost to him, and the threatened mate so veiled the position to his reason that he doubled his rooks and inevitable mate in 6 moves confronted him. His brain reeled. All the wrongs of a lifetime hideously clamored for vengeance. All the deceits, the lies, the betrayals of his opponent rose to his brain in startling brightness. He cursed the smiling fiend opposite him and staggered to his feet. Murder ranged like a burning demon through his thoughts, and springing upon Pythias with an awful cry, he buried both hands in his throat. He threw him back down upon the chessboard, and not with the rage of a fiend, but with a wonderfully sublime joy, choked him till his face grew black and agonized. It would have gone very bad for Pythias had not a rush of feet been heard on the stairs. A couple of policemen dashed in, and with Fred and George tore them apart. Then Damon came, bewildered, to his senses, and helped to restore his chum. "It was the old Birchall Dunsmore murder, nearly enacted over again," said the sergeant, as they stood on the corner talking it over. Dunsmore, his nephew, had been his life's curse. From boyhood he had always brought him trouble. As a man he broke Birchall's heart a dozen different ways, and at last, by cunning, thievish financing, he robbed him of all he had except the mansion. One night he prevailed upon the old man to stake it out on a game of chess. It was all that stood between him and the potter's field, and when he lost it he became demented and throttled his nephew across the very board on which he had been played the decisive game. Good chess players? It has been said that they were about the best the world has ever seen.